Hey everybody, welcome back. JJ here, you're watching Bull Boom Bear Bust. I was trying to think of what to call this video, and what I came up with was a new world is about to be unleashed. And I want to get into why I came up with that title, A New World. Well, I think you'll agree by the end of this. Take a look at some of this news here. We're going to get into a little bit of what's happening here with the conflicts and the wars, tie that in financially. Things are heating up globally. And remember, we talked just a few reports ago about how it was being said that the U.S. would be involved in these conflicts, but only in a non-combative role or roles. There was a report about 2,000 troops were sent over into the war zone and multiple war zones now in this case. We have now reports that it's not just non-combative roles. Here's some recent headlines here. This one happens to be out of Fox Business. U.S. troops in Middle East attacked 13 times last week. We've got other headlines. Syria's joining in the battle here. U.S. readies mass evacuations from the Middle East. Troops attacked 13 times, dozens wounded. These are different headlines, various different news sources, anywhere from NBC to MSN, the Post, the Express out of the UK. So you get the idea. This is not a geopolitical channel, so decide what you think is the truth, false, half-truth. Anyways, things are definitely heating up. And we've talked here before about how at the end of a system of credit or a period of extensive credit, aka debt accumulation, aka facade of a good economy, there's usually an excuse that someone's going to point to. Never let a good crisis go to waste. I'm sure many of you have heard that put out there, heard that said, that phrase, right? Will this be used, this escalating war situation, will this be used as an excuse to bring down the economy? We already see the deciders, the interest rate deciders, Jerome Powell and crew out there saying everything's fine. They're winning the war on inflation. The economy is looking very strong. Paraphrasing here, but that's basically what's being said. The consumer's strong. When we've debunked all of that here on this channel, we know none of those things are true that are being said about the economy. There's a big scam being run on all of us right now. We know about it, but we still have to live within the consequences of this system. And you may be doing well, you may be doing okay, you may be doing badly. But the bottom line is, I think most people would be doing better, if it weren't for some of the decisions that were made. So, of course, the decision makers, they're not going to take the blame. They're not going to say, yes, it was all our fault. Imagine Jerome Powell getting out there saying, yeah, interest rates, we kept rates for too low for too long. This cost of living crisis, it's all our fault. We printed too much money. We should have stayed on a gold standard. Would anyone want to bet any amount of money that he would ever come out and say that, or anyone affiliated with the central bank, or anyone within the financial system with any power? Do you think they would ever come out and say that? Of course not. Even if it was true, which it is, they're never going to come out and say that. So their talking points are, we're winning the war on inflation. We're doing good, and therefore we don't need to raise rates anymore. That's one of the recent things we heard said about the interest rate. So of course they have to say that, because that way they can justify not raising rates anymore, because if they raise rates more, they know things are just going to get worse. We already see late loans, automobile loans, foreclosures rising, credit card late payments skyrocketing, debt skyrocketing, consumer debt, city, state, local government debt, national debt, of course. We see, just massive debt, way beyond what we saw in the financial crisis. And it's not sustainable. So there has to be a point where the consumer is going to break. And I think people in control of this right now, I think they know that. So my question to you is, will they use this conflict as an excuse to bring down the markets, to bring down the economy? All right, this has been described, what's potential to happen here has been described as a Mad Max scenario. If the credit markets fail, there's going to be a lot of pain and hardship out there. Everything runs on credit. If the credit system freezes up, the credit markets freeze up, We're talking Mad Max within 48 to 72 hours. That's what I've heard many people describe as what could happen, Mad Max. Because basically the supply chains, when you look at food, 48 to 72 hours, the shelves are empty once the deliveries stop. And once the credit system, once the credit markets freeze up, everything freezes up, everything comes to a screeching halt, and it's going to be pretty difficult to try to go ahead and go to the store and get food because there may not be food, and the shelves will be cleaned out very, very quickly. All right, now I hope it doesn't get that bad, but I'm just saying when you look at the financial situation right now, we're at the end game here of this what looked like a bull market. It looked like a strong economy for a while, but it was based on debt. Right? If it weren't for the debt, we wouldn't have seen all this economic activity. But that's what happens when you have money that's detached from anything real, when it's detached from anything physical, such as gold, silver. Um, you could say it's tied to oil, but oil, the supply of oil doesn't limit the amount of dollars that can be created. That's my point. Of course, we've all heard of the petrodollar, but it's not. There's not a set ratio, or there's not a limit on what the ratio could be as to the number of dollars created versus how much oil is being put out there, right? Or the output. All right. So most of you know this, but I just wanted to put it out there and what I see, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. What do you see? Do you see this escalating? Or is this no big deal? This is just going to blow over in a few weeks, few months. Well, look at what happened over between Russia there. That didn't die down in a few weeks. That's been going on since February. And, millions of dollars, billions of dollars was sent over to the cause. And now we've got other wars happening, other things breaking out, different parts of the world. And will we see more things happen? What about China and Taiwan? There's some tensions there, possibility of that escalating. And, the consumer is close to being tapped out. Take a look at some of these headlines. And I apologize, I don't have my screen share on here today because I have one of my cameras that I use kind of had this weird fuzzy effect going on to it. I can't figure out how to change it. Let's take a look at some of the headlines that are out here. Even news outlets like NBC stating reality right here. Credit card debt is rising by billions of dollars at the worst possible time. A lot of the economic activity and what's been called growth is people running up more debt, and the worst possible time, right? Running up debt like never before. The levels of debt, the increases in debt are setting records at the pace of increase of the debt with high interest rates. So not a good combination there. Consumer debt passed the 17 trillion for the first time despite slide in mortgage demand. So even though the housing market has come to basically a trickle because of the sales volume is so low, because the inventory is so low and low number of transactions, people are still running up massive amounts of debt. Now it's credit cards. Still some mortgage debt being taken on, but it's at 23-year lows as far as the volume and the sales in real estate. So mostly credit cards, mostly people just buying necessities on credit cards. It's pretty sad. It's pretty scary to think about what's going to happen when the credit limits are cut, or when the credit limits even stop increasing. They don't even have to be cut. If they just stop increasing the credit limits for people, that's going to be pretty bad situation there. I just got a letter in the mail. They automatically increased my credit limit, Capital One. I didn't ask for it. I pay off my card in full each month, so it's not like I'm approaching my limit where I needed to get a higher limit. So now it's whatever it was, 15,000. Now it's 15,700. Why? If I'm not using the credit, why increase it? Pretty strange. Let's shift gears a little bit here. Still on the topic, though, of the cost of living. UAW, the strike, United Auto Workers strike continues. And why are we seeing all these strikes? Well, that's because the cost of living is too high, and wages are not enough to keep up, and people are demanding higher pay. UAW strikes GM Escalade factory, turning up pressure for higher wages. Bottom line is it's expanding, it's continuing, it's being extended here, and no end in sight, because everywhere you look, people want to get a higher wage. Not just they want to, everybody wants more money, but in some cases they have to in order to continue to pay rent, in order to continue to pay their mortgages, in order to continue to buy food. And by the way, we're seeing some big weakness in the rental market. And that should be a pretty big eye opener, because rents are a gauge of how much money people have from month to month, right? People aren't taking out loans and paying rent. Uh, if they do take out loans, maybe it's some sort of cash advance or something like that, or a credit card advance and paying the rent, something very short term that's not common. But for the most part, 99.9% of the time, it's people taking money out of their checking account, and also credit cards. People aren't using credit cards to pay rent most of the time. There could be some weird situation where you have a landlord that accepts that. But most of the time, it's cash, readily available cash in a checking account or savings account. And that's why that's a good gauge of the economy. And when the consumer is loaded up on so much debt and getting behind, and now they have to pay, many people, student loans, 40 million plus, and credit card debt with interest rates that are skyrocketing. There's probably a lot of interest accrued rather, on a lot of people's credit card statements. People are getting buried faster under debt. So it's natural that you see rents start to decline. And you want to hear about obvious signs that tell us that the consumer is not doing so good. Let's look at rents. Let's talk about rents. Recent headline here, Realtor.com, the rental market's downslide. 5 straight months of falling rents. Rent is falling for the first time in years, out of CNN. Here's a couple more here. CBS, rents are falling in major cities. Here's 24 metro areas where tenants are paying less this year. Another one here out of Business Insider. All right, so what's happening? It's happening slowly but surely, and things are just going to accelerate. Things are going to continue to get worse. That kind of sounds like a broken record thing for me to say, because I've said that quite a lot, but look at what's happening. Things are continuing to get worse. The debt situation, the escalations with the battles and the conflicts globally. It's happening, folks. And now the U.S. is getting more involved, and I think it's going to escalate. I think it's going to get much worse. And I think possibly U.S. soil might see some pretty tragic things happen here on U.S. soil. That's my opinion. What do you think? Am I paranoid? Am I looking too much into it? Am I worrying too much? Well, I wouldn't call it worrying. I would call it just being aware of where we're headed. And I think that's where we're headed, folks. So be ready. And I sleep better at night knowing that I'm ready in many different ways. Not as ready as I want to be, but definitely aware and cognizant of what's happening and what could potentially be right around the corner, right? So I hope everybody's well. What do you think about this video? Please let me know. And like, subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps the channel. Thank you all very much for your support, and we'll see you next time. Peace.